So, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening, this morning, wherever it is on the globe, wherever you are on the globe. I'm Boaz Fyler. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and I'm honored to be invited by Linda Johnson to speak to you today. And we're going to speak about death charts. I've been practicing evolutionary astrology with Maurice Fernandez since 1999, and I'm practicing astrologer for the last decade, and I teach, I give lectures worldwide. I have my own evolutionary astrology course that I give via webinar in English. If you want to join, you can always contact me. And today we're talking about death charts. I called this presentation "The Journey Continues." So before we even begin, I wish to thank my teacher, Maurice. And this lecture is based on Maurice's teachings, subjects, and idioms that I was first exposed to in his classes and writings. Now, before we dive into the analyzing of death charts, we must first establish an understanding of what is a natal chart and what is a death in an evolutionary perspective. So, what is the natal chart in evolutionary astrology? It's a snapshot of a moment in space and time that provides us not just of a portrait of one's character and orientation or destiny, but a curriculum vitae, a CV, if you will, of the soul's past resume, achievements, traumas, strength, weaknesses, and mainly, what has the soul come to work on and achieve from an evolutionary standpoint this time around? In the chart, we can identify what the soul has dragged into existence on this plane on both the conscious and unconscious levels from its continued journey of evolution through many lifetimes. Now, the primary reason I chose to have this talk with you today is not because I've studied the subject thoroughly. No. Even though I have been dealing with death charts for about 5 years now, I feel I have just started to explore this realm. No, this is a talk that is primarily oriented to ignite your interest in the subject too, because I feel it is understudied and it can provide us with a lot of guidance, solace, and comfort us in times of need. And we need to use it more often. I hope that by the end of this talk, you would be interested enough so that you will explore death charts yourselves with the passing of loved ones, important people in our lives, and in the ending of relationships or important episodes of our lives. So let me ask you, how is it that this did not come to pass so far, that we're not talking about death charts more? Well, if we believe that the moment the soul enters the world is important, how can we not think the moment it leaves this world to be important or as important as well? Well, part of it is because naturally we cannot do our own death charts or our client ones. Why then should we even waste our time casting and analyzing death charts? Well, that is the easy way out. I believe the answer lays in the fact that we are afraid of death and subconsciously stay away from dealing with it in hope that we would postpone it in some way. So, oh yeah, I see I'm not keeping up with the slides. I'm sorry. So, is death the end? Well, let me tell you how I see death. The change called death is not a finite thing or conclusive ending, but a portal, an ending of one's life cycle before the beginning of another in a great chain of creation. This is a rejoining with the source from which we came forth. The truth of the matter is that we deal with death all the time. When we end this talk, this would be, or that would be the death of this talk. Does that mean there will never be more talks? No. It just means that in order for another one to take place, this one must end. And when it ends, there would never be another one like it ever again for all of eternity. Now, for us, as creatures living on linear time, that is a sad thought. You see, death charts, in a broader sense, can be charts that are cast for endings of relationships, the closing down of a business, or any completion of a stage or process in your life. But today, let's begin with classical death charts, at least at the beginning. We'll see how much time we'll have, portraying the moment of death of human beings. Okay, so before we start analyzing the charts, beside regular symbolic meaning of Neptune as creativity, spirituality, fantasy, and so forth, we see Neptune in evolutionary astrology as God, or as the divine, or as everything that isn't us, everything that is wild and not within our control, that is greater than us. It also signifies the partition from the source, where we have the most acute feeling of a paradise lost, causing us a feeling of trauma or victimization, as well as seeing Neptune, the 12th house, and Pisces as the public, the populace, and the proletarian, the vast universe outside ourselves, the universal womb. And we always see a correlation in evolutionary astrology, as I studied it from Maurice, between the house, the sign, and the archetype. Is this understood so far?
Yes.
Good. So we will now examine the natal chart and the death chart of a soul I love. Of a soul I love, and has provided me with great inspiration. He would have been 77 today if things went differently. Can you recognize Winston?
No.
No. Well, we're talking about John Winston Lennon, born October 9th, 1830, Liverpool, England. His ascendant is a 19 Aries, symbolizing the natives' pioneering, independent, and headstrong nature. Okay, look at the nodes. The nodes are very important in death charts. We know the nodes for being the chariot of the soul, so to speak, where the soul comes from and what it comes to learn this time around in the north node and where it needs to go on to. So the nodes are important. So we see the nodes at the 6-12 axis, and we're going to analyze this chart a little bit so we can understand the death chart better. So we see the soul that it comes from humble, independent background, working class family, the Neptune-Mars signature on the south node. Now, Lennon's father was a seaman on a merchant ship who escaped home life by traveling the seas. With Aries in the 12th, we can imagine that the soul carries with it feelings of personal struggle to find one's own power. And there's always a pendulum with this signature between perceived omnipotence and unrealistic desires and aspirations, and a crushing sense of impotence and loss of power that can drive one to have experiences either with drugs or alcohol, or search for one's boundaries for the right action, and to put it simply, learning self-discipline. Alternatively, escape through creativity, through music, through art and spirituality to bring solace to oneself. Furthermore, it heightens the need to act for the greater good, Mars, Neptune, in a spiritual way that can even induce martyr-like tendencies and behavior or circumstances. Interestingly enough, This pours into his daily life very powerfully via the same signature in his sixth house, strengthening the idea that those feelings or memories, whether conscious or not, greatly influence his life, his work, and his service to mankind. One more theme of this 6-12 axis that combines well with the Aries Libra signature is the need to understand one's place in the great chain of things. When to give in and surrender to passivity or compromise, Neptune Libra, and when to insist and act, be in control, Aries Virgo. Or to put it simply, how to keep one's own uniqueness and successfully merge it to a greater ocean and be part of the whole. Now I want you to look at this sun. This is an amazingly powerful sun. It's on the North Node, it's in Libra, and it's on his descendant. Very powerful sun, signifying his need to make sure that his character fully blossoms this time around. That people hear his personal message, that his uniqueness shines forth. A very strong character, and in a sense, in a quest for justice and peace, Libra, in the sixth, and his ability to always present things from the other's perspective, both in a social and interpersonal context. His affinity to arts, and his great creativity and talent, and the great need to be of service in his work, the sixth house, and leave his mark on the world through his endeavors. Even as a boy, Lennon was known to be said that he would be famous one day. Or maybe, even better, as it was described by P. Harvey in his biography of Lennon, he was always a happy-go-lucky, good-humored, easygoing, lively lad. Okay, some of the signatures of that powerful sun on the descendant. Now I want you to look at the Chiron-Pluto conjunction in the fourth house in Leo. To me, that signifies the feeling of rejection that he suffered at home and great emotional trauma inflicted in his home when that home was shattered due to his father's and mother's action when he was just a wee boy. And I wanna give you a transcript from Wikipedia about Lennon's life. His father was often away from home, but sent regular paychecks to where Lennon lived with his mother. The checks stopped one day when he went absent without leave during World War II. When he came home 6 months later, his wife was pregnant with another man's child. He offered to take care of the child as well, but Julia, Lennon's mother, rejected the idea. After her sister, Mimi Smith, twice complained to Liverpool Social Services, Julia handed the care of Lennon over to her. Lennon's father visited the Smiths and took his son to Blackpool, secretly intending to immigrate to New Zealand with him. Julia and her boyfriend at the time, Bobby, followed his father after a heated argument, okay, and then confronted him, and his father made little Lennon choose between him and his mother. After choosing his father twice, Lennon started crying when his mother went away and followed her. It would be 20 years before he would have any contact with his father again. Now, throughout the rest of his childhood and adolescence, he lived with his aunt and uncle, who had no children of their own. Julia visited on a regular basis, and when John was 11 years old, he often visited her. She played him Elvis Presley records, taught him the banjo, and bought him his first guitar, knowing well that her sister did not support her son's musical aspirations, because they were very skeptical of Lennon's claim that he would become famous one day. They wanted him to have a better job than a musician. When Lennon was 17 years old, his mother, walking home after visiting him at the Smiths, was struck by a car and killed. In September 1980, Lennon commented about his family and his rebellious nature and said, "Part of me would always like to be accepted by all facets of society and not be that loudmouth, lunatic poet, musician. But I cannot be what I am not. I was the one who all the other boys' parents would say, including Paul's father, keep away from that boy. The parents instinctively recognized," Lennon is saying, "that I was a troublemaker, meaning I did not conform and I would be a bad influence on their children, which I was. I did the best to disrupt every friend's home, partly out of envy that I didn't have this so-called home. But in a way I did. There were 5 women that were my family, the 5 sisters of his mother. 5 strong, intelligent, beautiful women," Lennon says. "One happened to be my mother. She couldn't deal with life. She was the youngest, and she had a husband who ran away to sea and was at war, and she couldn't cope with me. And I ended up living with her elder sister. Now, those women were fantastic. And that was my first feminist education. I would infiltrate the other boys' minds. I could say, parents are not gods because I don't live with mine, and therefore I know." So look at that signature in the 4th house. And look how the moon is opposing that Chiron Pluto from the 10th in Aquarius, talking about his high career expectations and aspirations. His career was his identity in a sense. The moon always connects with one's identity. And of course, the strong matriarchal authority in his life, and the sense that he did not truly belong, that he was being raised by the tribe, by a blood-related group of females in a social humanitarian environment with a somewhat impersonal theme. Now in Israel, we have the kibbutzes. I don't know if you're familiar with kibbutzes. In kibbutzes, which are social environments, socialist environments, everybody is equal, and they used to raise their children in a children's home, away from the parents. All children were raised communally. And I always see that moon in Aquarius in children from kibbutzes as well, or children that were born and raised not in a personal surrounding, not in the nuclear family, so to speak. And of course, he was raised by his aunt and uncle. And of course, that moon also talks about his feelings of being different, being heterogenic, being a rebel ahead of his time, carrying concepts and feelings that were not fitting with his environment. And as a representation of his mother, somewhat emotionally erratic, not really there as a mom, detached, and still socially active and instrumental in tuning his rebellious behavior with the chords and lyrics, if you will, of the era. Are we understood so far?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, good. So a little bit about this chart and we'll go on. Look at the squaring Saturn, Jupiter to that moon from the 1st. An important signature, okay, in Taurus. Uranus is not far away as well, and all of that is opposing Mercury in the 7th in Scorpio. What does that tell me as an astrologer? First of all, I see it with a lot of that Saturn Jupiter signature conjunction comes with a lot of great thinkers that always begin humbly. He felt he wasn't good enough, not built to stand up to what was expected of him by his immediate surroundings, that his beliefs, Jupiter, could or would not be accepted by mainstream society. And that is strengthened by that opposition to Mercury in the 7th in Scorpio, indicating how plutonic and volatile these verbal and ideological arguments could become in his early environment with others on an interpersonal level. And of course, it talks about his idealism and later his judgment of society and his father, Saturn. Now, Saturn in Taurus is tremendously persistent, and coupled with that Jupiter, Lennon had to be true to his beliefs and his dogmas, even if it meant that that would bring conflict or demand great sacrifice. He could not shun away from his own truth. As I said, Uranus is not far away, empowering the rebel and the nonconformist, and the look to the future and thinking differently. And furthermore, all of these three planets are in retro. Just for the difference of it all. Venus is in Virgo, quincunxing the moon in Aquarius in the 10th. This guy expected perfection when it came to his creativity. He could be a maniac when it came to the finer details that make something good into something really great. That made him a very demanding man and not an easy man to work with. But with this very sharp purging aspect to his moon, he was always a step ahead of anyone else and bringing forth an avant-garde theme in a most excellent way imaginable. And that was a must for him, not a recommendation. And with this Mars on the North Node, again, he was willing to fight for it. And for what was he willing to fight with Mars and Libra? For peace. Now, what should we look for in the death chart? In general, recurring patterns, similar signatures and degrees that provide correlation between the moments of birth and the moments of death. Many times, the nodes will play a significant part. The luminaries will play a significant part, as well as fast-pacing planets, while the slower planets provide the general undertone for the period. For example, we can find Pluto or Chiron transiting in a very challenging position in regards to the natal chart, but it would be the moon, the sun, or Mars that would click the actual event into motion. Is this understood?
Yes.
Good. Let's look at Lennon's death chart. He died on the 8th of December, 1980, 2300 hours in Manhattan, New York City. I want you to look at the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Venus ruled signs in both charts. Okay? So here you have both charts. Can you see them?
Yes.
So look at the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Venus-ruled signs. Okay? It's both in the first house, okay? It's going on with the soul to the next life. He will still be true to his philosophy and very uncompromising about what he believes. This John is not giving up on his ideology, Jupiter, and will continue to work hard to make them real, to make it real, Saturn. Notice how in both charts, the moon squares that conjunction, once from the 10th and once from the 4th. But in Capricorn. The moon conjunct Mars in Capricorn, squaring Saturn in the death chart, teaches us of his relationship with Yoko, okay? A strong woman, and how his lack of that initial maternal sustenance played out in their relationship and in his relationship with women in general, as fragility and lack of self-confidence. We can see the death chart as the culmination of one's life. Look at the sun and moon. They are almost in the same degrees. Note that in both the death chart and the birth chart, the degrees of the nodes repeat almost exactly in the same houses and in the same elements. The nodes again are in the 6-12 axis, but this time they are reversed. This time the south node is in Aquarius, like his natal moon, in the 6th, symbolizing the New Age, avant-garde, social themes, and the character this soul chose to bring with it, Aquarius, and evolve to become in his lifetime. The area of work, of daily life and service to mankind, the 6th house. The North Node in Leo in the 12th, symbolizing the road ahead of the soul. This is always a signature of being famous, of being known. And it brings it to the next life, okay? It is the attaining of an iconic status. It is being famous, Sun, Neptune, or Leo, Pisces, and choosing to take part in life fully with all of my heart in a very creative way, Leo, involving music and the arts, Neptune, sacrifice and martyrdom. Now, this signature plays out again with the Sun conjunct Neptune in the death chart in the 4th house, making this a public affair. In Sagittarius, okay, what could be more public than that? Sun Neptune in Sagittarius. And the fact that it made Lennon even more popular, more loved and known, and spread his belief, again Sagittarius, his ideology, Sagittarius, further and wider within the public, again Neptune, and the fact that this loss of life was unexpected, Neptune, and happened at home, the 4th house. Chiron squares the nodes from the 9th in Taurus, symbolizing the bodily trauma, Taurus, and the fact that he was killed for his beliefs and philosophy, the 9th house, not in his country of birth, Sagittarius, again. Now, just a small note, how fitting that Aries, that was on the ascendant at birth in the natal chart, is in the 8th house in death. Now, there are many more layers to understand and explore. Notice that we find in both natal and death chart the similar signatures, okay? In the natal chart, Chiron squares Mercury in Scorpio in the 7th. That's a Mercury-Pluto-Venus signature. And in the death chart, Chiron opposes Venus in the 3rd in Scorpio, signifying, it's the same signature, signifying again the volatile nature, Scorpio, of his words and opinions, Mercury, and what effect it had on others, his relationships, Venus, and the danger and conflict they raised, especially we can see it in the natal chart, and the direct cause of the wound and violent outcome of that in the death chart. Now, I want you to look how in the death chart, Pluto was at that hour on the 7th, on the descendant, okay? And Mars clicks the event into action by squaring the nodes in Capricorn in the 9th. Again, a conflict over philosophy by an outside force or action. Look at the uncomfortable connection between Mercury and Venus in a square. Uranus opposes Uranus. Neptune squares Neptune. And Chiron is on the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the natal chart, showing us again why he was killed. While the same conjunction at the sky at the time of death sits on his north node, indicating that this violent and sad occurrence is not totally devoid of a higher meaning, and that indeed the soul might have chosen this outcome and this moment in time as one possibility agreed upon. That this wasn't totally random, arbitrary, or meaningless. Is this understood so far?
Yes.
Yes.
So let's go to our next chart, and we won't be analyzing, since we don't have a lot of time, we won't be analyzing the chart so deeply. I wanted to analyze the first chart as deeply as I could in the time frame given, so we can understand that the two stories of birth and death always talk. They always relate to each other. But look at Abe Lincoln, okay? He was born 6 a.m., February 12th, 1809 in Hodgenville, Kentucky, and he died on 7/22, April 15th, 1865 in Washington, D.C. First of all, when we put these two charts together, the nodes are aligned. Look at how closely they're aligned. Okay. Look at the ascendance degree. Okay. I'm gonna move to the previous slide. Look at the ascendance degree. Okay, the same degree. Mercury conjunct Pisces in the second, not far from Venus. Pluto Mercury conjunct in Taurus in the 12th, not far away from Venus in the death chart. Same signature. Chiron squaring the nodes in the natal charts. Chiron squaring the nodes, squaring the moon in the death chart. As we know, the nodes are the nodes of the moon. Moon square Mars in Libra in the 9th. Mars in Cancer opposition Jupiter in the 2nd. Can you follow me? Do you follow me?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a Mars, Venus, Moon, Jupiter mark. And look at the transiting Sun in opposition to natal Mars, and Saturn on natal Mars, Venus Neptune opposition, and conjunction in the biwheel. Okay, so we see these signatures reoccurring, and again they tell a story. They all tell a story, and we can dive into this story if we have the time. But I want to go on, and if we have more time, we can dive into it at the end. So let's look at the killer. And just before we go on to the killer, look, the nodes do not align in all the death charts that I've investigated so far, but they do play a part in a lot of them. And what I found out is that if that person or that chapter or that project reached completion, in a sense, or was able to provide this world with the signature or mark that it needed to provide in its inception, the nodes would be aligned north node to north node. But, and this is only for my own studies, okay, if the message was cut short, if that person or project was not able to come to a full completion, we would either see a square or an opposition between the nodes, as if the south node would be on the north node. Okay? Now let's go on to John Wilkes Booth charts. He was born at 132, May 10th, 1838 in Bel Air Acres, MD, and he died at 5:30 a.m., April 26, 1865 in Port Royal, Virginia. So we can see again the moon opposing natal moon on natal sun. The luminary is playing a big part. We see transiting Mars again squaring the nodes. We see the transiting sun conjunct the sun nodes, the south node on natal Mars. Fast death. We see Saturn in the 26 degrees in both charts, once conjunct the moon and once conjunct the north node. Again, lunar nodes and moon playing a part. We have the moon opposing Mercury in Taurus in one chart and Moon conjunct Mercury in Taurus in the other. We have the Moon opposing Uranus in both charts, and Pluto in Taurus on the ascendant in one chart, while Pluto is on the second house on the North Node in the second chart. We have Chiron in Gemini squaring Uranus in Pisces in one chart. We have Chiron in Pisces squaring Uranus in Gemini in the second chart. Again, a Mars-Neptune square in both charts. Isn't this fascinating?
Absolutely.
And here is the bi-wheel, just to look at the nodes. Look what's happening with the nodes. They're not aligned, but we can see that Mr. Booth is going into a next life with a lot of karma with this Saturn on the North Node at his death. Now, he's not the only one I know that is going on to meet a lot of karma in his next life. Here's the next guy. So, Mr. Hitler. Darker and darker still, we delve into the Jupiterian Scorpionic realms to illuminate our soul. So, Hitler, born 1830, April 20, 1889, in Braunau am Inn in Austria. And he died in 1530, April 30, 1945, in Berlin, Germany. So, let's look at the bi-wheel. Nodes aligned, I'm afraid. This guy was able to complete what he came here to do. Now, look at the Saturn-Chiron conjunction on the nodes. Look how he continues to a place with a lot of karma. Okay, look at the moon. Look at the Pluto-Saturn conjunction as well, okay? And look at the Moon-Jupiter conjunction in the natal chart, okay? And look at the Moon in Sagittarius in the death charts. And by the way, if we look at the natal chart, and this is a little far out, okay? This is going into numerology. But the Moon, Moon-Jupiter in the natal chart is in the 6th and the 8th degrees. That makes it 14, and of course that's the exact degree of the moon in Sagittarius in the death chart. Funnily enough, Mercury squaring the nodes in both charts, signifying of course that this is a very problematic person regarding his opinions, the information that he spreads, the ideas that he has, so on and so forth, and this goes on with him to the next life. And look at that Venus conjunct Mercury, and remember that Venus is his natal chart's ascendant ruler. So this is an important planet for him. Let's go on. Another man I love, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Born 1500 hours on May 29th, 1917 in Brooklyn, Massachusetts. Died at 12:30 p.m. 22nd of November 1963 in Dallas, Texas. So, what do you think? Look at the nodes. Look at the Mercury-Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Taurus. Look at the Mercury-Mars-Venus conjunction in Sagittarius in his death. And I'm sorry, I lost my my train of thought. A minute. Look at the ascendant's degrees again, okay? Look at Saturn conjunct Neptune in Cancer on the MC in his natal chart, and then Saturn conjunct the moon in the 12th on his ascendant in the death chart. And again, when we put the two charts together, we can learn a lot, and especially for me, learn that this journey was cut short. But again, that things are not arbitrary in this universe. Now, we talked about the ending of a life, but can we take death charts further? Can we take them to an ending of a relationship? So let's look at the relationship I love and adore. Linda and Paul McCartney were an amazing, terrific couple until her passing. So let's first look at Linda McCartney, okay? This is her natal chart. This is her death chart. Let's look at them combined just for a second. We see the nodes are not exactly aligned, okay? But we can still see that Chiron is on her natal Scorpio moon in death, signifying the time she was going through. She had breast cancer. She died of breast cancer. We can see also Pluto in her second house. We can see Jupiter, that often plays a part freeing the soul in death charts, or just providing freedom, as Jupiter does in death charts. So we can see Jupiter, Venus on her south node. We can see Saturn on Mars. We can see Sun Mars squaring that Pluto Chiron. And we can see that Mars opposes the Sun in the natal chart and is conjunct the Sun in death. Some recurring patterns. We can see Jupiter squaring the nodes in the natal chart and Jupiter on the south nodes, on the nodes in the natal chart. We can see Venus, Moon square Jupiter in the natal chart and Venus in the fourth conjunct Jupiter in the natal chart, in the death chart. And we can see Sun conjunct Neptune in the natal chart and Sun square Neptune in the death chart. So we can see that it clearly applies for her as well, but can we take that moment of death as the moment of an ending of their marriage as well? So when we look at it as the ending of the marriage, I want you to look at the exact Saturn return. Okay, there's a lunar return as well, but look at the exact Saturn return. They were born, and this marriage was born and lasted an exact Saturn return. How amazing is that? And Jupiter is on the Sun, again, freeing us from that bond of marriage, ending it in a sense. Pluto is on Mars. That's a long-term effect, of course. Sun is on natal Venus, signifying the love and romance that these two souls had. Okay, so maybe it does work for relationships as well. But then I was thinking maybe we can go on and even broaden it a little. And I want you to go on with me to this next part, okay? World Trade Center. So I pulled from Wikipedia the date that the design of the World Trade Center was unveiled to the public. On 18th January 1964, this is a solar chart. We don't know the exact time, so it's 12 p.m., sun on first. And we have, of course, September 11, 2001 in Manhattan, New York at 8:46 a.m., the time that the first plane hit the Twin Towers. And if we put them together, look at the nodes. Look at the nodes. Look at Mars, Mercury. Look at on both Jupiters, okay? Squaring the nodes in one, on the nodes in the other. Look at the Moon-Chiron relationship, opposing in one, conjunction in the other. And there's a lot of religious fanaticism here as well, but we're not going to analyze these charts thoroughly. But this is just to give you a hint of the potential that there is in these charts if we dive into them. So, we see that the moment of death holds a great significance, just like the moment of birth does, showing us what we have achieved and where we are heading. The death charts tell us the story of why this person died, how he lived, or that project, or that marriage, and what was managed at the time of that existence, what was accomplished, as well as where this soul or this project or that signature is heading or leaving us with. All this provides solace to the ones left behind and gives us, the living, a greater understanding of what life is all about. Indeed, that is the exact intention and the reason we should cast death charts. Or as Maurice Fernandez often says, understanding death makes us live better. What a wonderful theme this is for Jupiter in Scorpio. So, of course, I want to thank you for listening, and if you want more, you're welcome to go to boazfyler.com. Follow me on YouTube in Evolutionary Astrology Forecast. Like me on Profiler Astrology on Facebook, and you can always contact my US number. That's 1-347-8018-715, or WhatsApp me on my Israeli number, or email me, boazfyler@gmail.com. And I really hoped you enjoyed this. And may you live long and prosper, as I always end these talks. And that's all for now, folks. And now we can have a few moments for questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Boaz. Could you please...
No, it was my pleasure.
Stop share at the top of the screen.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Anyone with a question or a comment?
I'm gonna... Okay, yes, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just speak up, please.
This was so just absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It is fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating to me. That's why I'm studying it. Thank you. Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate it. So, is there any questions? Sheila Jean, it's good to see you. But if you want me to hear you, have to unmute yourself.
Unmute, Sheila.
Okay, hang on.
It's okay. We can hear you, Sheila.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, when I first saw that you were offering this talk, Boaz, I thought you were going to talk about things like predicting the potential, a likely time of death. But so that's not what the talk was about at all. And I'm trying to brush up on, what I know about it, just so I didn't look like a fool. But I actually did a death chart for when my parents passed,
Mm-hmm.
and at first I did it because my sisters had charged me with writing the
Obituary?
memorial,
Yeah.
with speaking at the service, and so I was kind of overwhelmed with grief and couldn't focus.
Of
And
course.
by doing the death chart, I could focus and find
Wonderful.
a way to write it. So
Wonderful.
other than that, I enjoyed the talk. I would have been able to follow it a little better if on the when you were describing certain aspects,
Mm-hmm.
if they had been highlighted and then disappeared, or if there was a
Yes.
pointer. I just don't think that fast, especially if
I'm
I have to
sorry.
look
First of all, I
around.
apologize. You probably came in a little late because at the beginning I said I wouldn't be able to annotate, and I'm sorry for that because I was
Oh,
on
yes, I
computers.
did come in a little
But
late.
what I
Sorry.
suggest is that you all look at the recording, and you can always pause it
Yes.
and check those patterns. But more than that, even, don't utilize. Make this the first step for you
Yeah.
to go on and explore death charts yourselves. And if you find anything interesting, be sure to share this information with me, and we'll build a better pool of knowledge for all of us. Okay? Because this is the tip of the iceberg. And just seeing so much significance with the nodes baffled me that I had to explore deeper, and then seeing the reoccurring patterns just through my lead off. So I really, it doesn't only work for famous people, it works for everybody. If we do the death charts, and also for projects or relationships in our life, and we find interesting things, I think it could be important for us as a community.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Sheilaji.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up that I noticed that the nodes were triggered in my own chart when my father passed away.
Yes.
Chiron was sitting right on my south node.
Yes.
So yeah, I remember that. So
it's a classical signature. It's a classical signature, and of course, the south node connects to family. It connects to lunar aspects, and
yeah,
we often see sickness triggered or grief triggered with Chiron traveling over our south node.
and so Jupiter was conjunct my natal Chiron, Saturn Chiron Mercury conjunction, and my south node sits in the third house.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
So there you go. You start seeing the recurring patterns.
Yeah, that was popping off in my. That's what I was checking just to be sure, because I was remembering that as you were talking, and that was one of the points I was going to bring up or ask you. Have you seen the nodes triggered in not necessarily the person that died, but a close family member?
Yes, definitely. We can see it affecting the charts of many family members differently, but having the same kind of themes in the signatures. And we often see family members or children of parents carrying similar signatures as if they were inherited genetically or astrologically into their chart. So we could see different family members carrying similar signatures playing out differently within their natal charts. This is another different subject that is fascinating, taking the charts of children and parents and looking how patterns are passed on astrologically into the children's natal chart and how they interact.
I just wanted to mention, this is Patty. I did the death charts for both my brother and my daughter. I was present at both times, so I had the exact time.
Yes.
And definitely the moon in both of their charts, and Jupiter in both of their charts played significant roles in that, in addition to, I believe it was Mars triggering it.
Yes.
And in mine, I'm going to go back and look at their charts on the nodes because I don't remember specifically. I didn't really compare their natal to their death that way.
That's where it gets interesting.
I didn't overlay them. I just sort of like looked at them side by side and sort of did that, the mental thing of connecting it, looking for certain connections.
Remember that lunar connections are nodal connections. Okay, so whenever we see a connection to the moon and also to the sun, because we are talking about the crossing of the orbit of the moon around Earth and the orbit of Earth around the sun when we're talking about lunar nodes. Mm-hmm. So the luminaries often play a part. We don't always see the nodes, but we can see we can see the moon playing a part, we can see the sun playing a part, and of course Mars.
And both of them, it dealt with full moons.
Full moons.
Yeah. They both passed at the day before a full moon.
Wow. And well, I'd love to hear from you more once you explore their natal chart in reference to their death chart to see what was the lunar phase in their birth, for instance. I
will pull that up and get that info to you just so you can use it for research stuff, because you know so much more about it than I do, and
I don't.
be able to utilize it maybe for your research. But thank you.
I appreciate it.
I really appreciated this presentation.
Thank you.
Boaz, this is Sheila Fay.
Yes, Sheila, hello.
Instead of Sheila Jean.
Yeah.
I've been looking at death charts as well, and I have noticed the thing with the nodes for sure, and with Jupiter. Jupiter has been really important, and of course the 8th house.
Yes.
Or Scorpio, Pluto. I've also been taking a look at the ruler of the North Node, and where that's present at the time of the death, because I find it interesting. I wanted to hear you maybe talk some more about why you think a life might be cut short or not be complete if the nodes are reversed, like if you're having a reverse nodal return, and if that might signify something differently depending on where the ruler of the North Node is at the time of the death.
Well, yes, I certainly agree with you that the ruler can play a significant part. We saw that in Adolf Hitler's chart as well. I know that was the ascendance ruler, but I'm definitely going to look at the North Node ruler from now on, which it's a wonderful point, and I thank you for it. What was your second question? About?
Well, I was asking you, I wanted you to maybe elaborate a little bit more on this idea that if the nodes align, but they're
right. So this is only, we don't have enough body of research to know if these assumptions are correct or they're not correct. But in the charts that I've seen, both from personal clients and in my research, oftentimes, things that have not come to a full blossom have the nodes reversed. It's as if you need to go back and check your basics. You have to go back to the beginning in order to make up for a previous mistake or a lack of something. And here's something that is semi-connected, Through my years as an astrologer, I often saw people that are in conflict, that have a great attraction to one another, but are in conflict with the nodes reversed. Okay? They're coming from different places. They're going in opposite directions. So sometimes that could mean that this was cut short because of an opposite power thinking differently at the time. Okay? That the endeavors, that the aspirations of that project or human or relationship, whatever they'll be, were harmed by someone coming or something coming from the other side in an opposite direction. Is that a little clearer?
Yes, it is. In fact, it's very clear, and I can bear that out in my own life because I have 5 children, and many of my children have similar patterns in their charts. I confirm what you said about that. And my twins, my youngest ones, have my nodes in the reverse order.
Wow.
And they have, of course, found me more difficult than I find them. But we challenge each other, and I found it very helpful. I find it really good. But I like challenge, so that works for me. You know,
that's great.
The process.
That's great.
So I can really see that, and I liked what you said about that as well. It touches a place in me. I've been actually looking at my own chart because I have a reverse nodal return. Jupiter square the nodes. My Jupiter is in Taurus, and so every time there's a Jupiter opposition or Jupiter conjunction, because the opposition will be Jupiter in Scorpio, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I have gotten to visit that opportunity to leave my body.
Wow.
And so I'm about to experience another Jupiter opposition pretty soon. So I was looking at that to see, well, and looking at my children's charts to see, well, what's going to be happening for them? How, you know, what's coming for them so that I could anticipate. And I think this might be a way we can anticipate.
Definitely.
Is by looking at the community. And what meaning will the community be making of this if this is an event that's coming up? So it's
definitely.
Just
and first of all, I hope and wish that you'll be with us for many, many, many more healthy, wonderful years.
Yes, well, I'm very committed to this incarnation every day. So
good. I'm happy to hear that. But you know, if worst comes to, I mean, let's say that if we see a time that we might be leaving our body, okay, and that we do see that it holds a significance for people who are dear to us. And we work with that. We work with that consciousness, we work with that understanding, and we better our lives, or we become more consciously aware of every moment and every breath, and we aim to fix things in our relationships and better them with our kin and so forth. And we end up living and not dying. Then, you know, that's great. We did a lot of good things, even though we were preparing. I always say, live your life as if this is the last day on earth, and plan like you're here for 100 years, okay? Because you have to have both strategic aspects and the immediate enjoyment of one's breath. They're both equally important.
that's very wise. Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, Boaz, and thank you from all of us. See you next time.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.